Hello, fitness business nerds. Welcome. In today's episodes, I'm bringing you Mark Fisher. It's one of our bonus episodes that comes to you every 2 weeks. And we really focus on two main topics in this conversation. We talk one about expense ratios. Exactly how much should you be spending on each expense item in your fitness business? And then we go on the opposite side of the coin from all that math and spreadsheets, talking about the idea of internalized capitalism, the idea that our identity often as entrepreneurs and business owners is so tied to our productivity and our work, and how that can be dangerous sometimes. And then we end this conversation with Mark answering my final 5 questions. So if that sounds fun for you, stick with us. Let's do it. The Business for Unicorns podcast is for fitness business owners who want actionable strategies to grow their business, take amazing care of their clients, and build a life and business they truly love. I'm your host, Michael Keeler, co-founder of Mark Fisher Fitness, and through Business for Unicorns, I'm a coach and consultant to industry-leading fitness studios around the world. Let's get started. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Business for Unicorns podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today, and I have a special guest. It's Mark Fisher. You know by the title of this that it's Mark Fisher. It's not a surprise. And we promise we're going to give you some bonus episodes every once in a while, and today's our second one. So let's get into it. Mark Fisher, welcome, my friend.
Hi. I'm not a surprise at all.
You're not a surprise at all. Oh, look, we're both doing white mugs today. I'm very white and shiny because today is a day when we got lots of snow, so I look very bright and white, almost like a ghost, because out my window is miles of snow.
Yes.
So much snow. It's lovely, but I did spend like an hour shoveling it when it was not so lovely earlier.
Oh, yeah, that's home ownership, huh?
Yeah, home ownership. I just consider it my workout for the day, which is better than I've been doing most days. So I'll take it.
You should do homebody here. It's good.
I was doing it a lot for a while. I've just, since I got in this house, been slowing down. I need to get back on the horse.
You got more room than ever.
I have so much room. I have empty rooms with no furniture for days. Well, I'm glad we're doing this again. I'm stoked to have these chats. I mean, not that we don't talk about fun topics all the time, but to talk about fun topics, that aren't really necessary to talk about in meetings.
Yes.
It's kind of fun just to have another format, just to be like, I don't know, let's just talk about things that we're curious about. So for you listeners and watchers, we think that's going to be the format of these shares. It's like, every other week, Mark and I are just going to do a bonus episode, and we're just going to talk about stuff that's on our mind, things we're thinking about, things we're learning, hopefully things that you care about too, and that you're also interested in hearing us talk about. And so that's the loosey-goosey structure of this. That's what we got. But I think it's going to be fun. Do you want to get the ball rolling? What do you want to talk about today?
Sure. I'm going to talk about salary caps.
Ooh.
I'm going to talk about salary caps. So many of you know, if you follow my stuff, I do read lots of things. I am rereading what I think is one of the best books on personal finance for entrepreneurs out there, which is a book called Simple Numbers by Greg Crabtree. This is my second time reading the book. The first time I read it actually was before I read what is the finance book for entrepreneurs, which is Profit First, which if you haven't read it yet, go run and read it. And then directly after, read Profit First for Micro Gyms, because that will have a lot of specific information for the context of our industry and the types of businesses that many of you own. And Simple Numbers, I believe, predates Profit First, and it's not a cash management system, but there's some good stuff that I think is good for you to know as an entrepreneur. Now, I will say up front, as much as I did love the book, reading it the second time around, honestly, the full second half of it, maybe even 2/3, is not stuff that's probably going to be as useful for most of you listening. It's really more about how do you value your business if you're going to do a buy-sell agreement, if you want to sell part of your business to employee. Some of that may be for some of you. So I think there's some good stuff about how one actually values a business. But there's a lot of like just real brass tacks, super simple but important stuff about a business. Like you should have some extra operating expense in your business. I think Greg Crabtree recommends 3 months of operating expenses. A common mistake that he mentions that a lot of entrepreneurs do is, first of all, they play games with their distributions and salaries. So they pay themselves way below market. Then they're excited about like their profit margins. But the only reason the profit margins are that high is because they're paying themselves like $30,000 a year, even though they'd have to pay, depending on the market, 2, 3, 4 times that, depending on their business and what their role is. And So I think that that's certainly like a quick takeaway is if you don't have 3 months of operating expenses, it's something at least to work towards and certainly get out of debt if you can. But one of the things for me that I knew to be the case that I've been thinking a lot about lately, as per this podcast, is
Yeah.
salary cap. Like what percentage of the dollar that comes in can go to pay for your team? Many businesses, and MFF was guilty of this for many years. This number can really get blown out of proportion, particularly when you're in a service business. Because in the service business, you're not dealing with inventory. It was another thing too, reading this business, I was like, this book, I was reminded that our business is kind of simple. And I kind of appreciate that. So we don't have to deal with inventory. We don't have to deal with these massive accounts payable and receivable and kind of stuff. It's like people pay us and then we do the services. We're not holding inventory because we're selling stuff. Now, services are also challenging, of course, because what you're selling is human life force, and that's very difficult, which is why we have this whole second career in business, teaching people how to create service businesses.
Yep.
But the takeaway is this: when you're looking at the amount of money you're spending on your business, in a typical fitness business, and I've studied a lot of different frameworks for this, you're usually going to want to pay, I've never heard less than 25%. And usually 45% is like a kind of a hard stop, the most it should be. So when you think about how much money you make per month, how much of that is currently going to pay out your team? When you think about how much money you make per year, how much of that is going to pay out your team? It is not uncommon for this to be very emotionally painful because many fitness business entrepreneurs, in our desires to be generous and our desires to be the bosses that we never had, we often come in and inadvertently overpay our team members up front. And then it leads to serious issues and very difficult conversations down the road. Because, of course, when you started by overpaying someone, there's not an elegant way to correct that doesn't lead to real issues. You can do it, but there's not like an easy way to do it. And it's usually going to have some negative outcomes. So as far as where you want to be in there, it's I think there's some room for debate, right? So John Briggs in his book, Profit First for Micro Gyms, says financially fit gyms tend to be around 25% of revenue. That sounds good. That sounds good. I can't figure out how anyone would do that, but I think, I realize we have a little bias too because we live in New York, so our world is different. Everything is more expensive. Perhaps in other markets, it is a little bit more viable. The standard you often hear from the CrossFit world, and I believe this was mostly from the Two Brains methodology, is the ninths model, right? Where 2/9 goes towards like fixed expenses. Then you have 3/9 goes towards the owner, and I think it is a 4/9. Yeah, 4/9 goes towards the
a lot of
people.
fractions. Yeah,
a lot of fractions. So,
fractions.
and I'll keep it easy for you. It's like 33% goes to profit, and then 44% goes to your team.
Yeah.
Right. So again, we keep coming to this range. It's like it should be at least 25%. But if you're paying more than 44% of your revenue on a monthly or yearly basis for your team, something has to change. And it might be some difficult conversations, but it is not an easy thing to do. And certainly we're happy to, if we can be of help in figuring out like how to do that. If you're like, oh no, I'm at 70%.
Yeah.
You're going to want to change that immediately. And we can maybe have some chats with you because we've had to do some things over the years to fix that too, because did the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, for those of you who I think we've probably said this in our last podcast, our last chat together, was for those of you who are just don't even know what your numbers are, start there. If you don't know what percentage of your expenses, of your revenue goes to paying your team, then you should just start by knowing that.
Yeah.
That's a great place to start. And I just want to, underscore the things you just said about how easy it is, how many good reasons we can all come up with to pay our staff well.
Oh gosh.
There's so many good reasons about caring for them, wanting them to live well, wanting them to stay, wanting to attract the best talent in the first place and compete with competitors who, maybe we shouldn't be competing with when it comes to salary. I mean, there's so many easy reasons to spend more on this. And spending less is really hard. It just, and it's a lot of tough conversations if you have to pull back on what you're paying people or let people go. And this year, many of us, I should say last year, by the time this comes out in 2020, many of us had to have those tough conversations, let people go. And it was not fun. So many of us have those fresh wounds about having to downsize. So I think the key is just, not making a mistake to begin with. If you haven't already, And so knowing your numbers is so important.
And I would add one more thing that is pertinent, because part of the issue sometimes is you're not good enough in marketing and sales.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the issue is not even that like you need to pay your team a whole lot less. You have to learn how to make money. You have to learn how to make it rain.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to intentionally pull levers so that you can grow your revenue, because that's the other thing too to consider. You might intentionally choose to violate that current salary cap rule because you are building up capacity because you know that you're going to scale up and grow your business. Now, once again, for a geographic dependent brick and mortar training gym, it usually doesn't work quite that way. It's not a matter of like, oh, this year I'm gonna double my revenue, so I'm gonna hire this person, this giant comp, because I know they're really going to deliver. Like, that's not usually the way it's going to work for most of the people listening to this. But I would say that you might, for instance, just hypothetically, consider, for instance, maybe your salary cap for a specific period go up to maybe 50% because you've hired a salesperson. Now,
Sure.
again, depending on your model, for most of you, it's probably not realistic. A lot of you you're going to need to be the salesperson in your business because it tends to be expensive. But if you structure the comp right, if somebody's coming in at a very reasonable base and they are getting commission for sales, and you really know how to give them a system and a playbook that they can run with, sometimes it might make sense to do that and spend more money so you have more capacity really focused on growing the business. That's the kind of thing that for a typical training gym is something you could maybe consider.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there's very few reasons in a brick and mortar gym to really get way past the 40% mark with that's not a salesperson.
Yeah.
Unless you're really, as an owner working yourself out of the business in a way that's going to bring you lots of money and your pay can go down, which is something we've played around with as we've changed our relationship with Mark Fisher Fitness over the years. But there's very few reasons why you need to go over that amount besides maybe a salesperson or the owner relationship changing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just knowing those numbers and keeping track. And to your point, the book is called Simple Numbers because it's pretty simple. There's not, like this is not complicated financial management we're recommending. It's really just knowing the basics and consistently, because here's the catch 22 is we're telling people to that they might not have enough sales to warrant what they're spending on people, but we're also telling people you can't sell your way out of spending too much.
Right.
You have to play both sides of the game. You have to focus on the offense and be great and know how to make it rain and have good sales. And sometimes you're just spending too much. And so it's never one or the other. It's you gotta keep your eye on both. Yeah. Anything else from that book that stands out and you've been thinking about?
I think that's the biggest one. I think related to this, one other distinction I'll make, and this harkens back to a point I made to the last podcast, if you listened, and if you're emotionally comfortable with me using the word hearken. When you look again at all these frameworks, you have profit first, you have simple numbers, you have, and every person in the industry that does this type of work will tend to have their frameworks and their model. The other thing that is worth appreciating is, depending on the framework, sometimes owner pay is included in profits. Sometimes it's included in salary is a different thing, right? So understand also when I'm saying, 40 to 45% is a hard stop for people, that is excluding the either salary or the profit of the owner. There's a whole different conversation about how that works. Having said that, I do think profit first and then this fraction heavy, ninths model are both in the same ballpark, right? You're looking at 35%, and that's going to be owner pay and perks. That's going to be profit, which you either stay in the business or distribute, and it's going to be paying out your taxes, because if you make money, you have to pay taxes, right? So again, there's a different conversation probably be had about like exactly how that gets divvied up, but the profit first model, for the broad profit first model, which is different than the micro gym one, the standard there is out of that 35%, you have 15%, which you save to pay taxes on the money made, 10% goes to owner pay and perks, and then 10% goes to the profit account. And that changes a little bit based on the size of the business, but that is a general rule of thumb. And again, we can parse over, there's slightly different ways of looking at it, but I think that's a good rule of thumb. And I will say once again, to double down on the point Keeler just made, and what we really said in the last podcast, keep this high level. It does not need to be complicated. There's really only you got your people, you got your expenses, you got the profit, the taxes. That's it. Just keep it that high level, and then really look at those numbers on a monthly basis, and you will learn many things about your business.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think those are great takeaways. And it's the thing I love about those two books is that regardless of one's relationship with money, which can be complicated and fraught for many people, they keep it simple. I mean, that's the whole point of both of those all three of those books you mentioned.
Yeah. If
So
you actually, I'll throw in another pro tip. If you really want to get like weird and into finance stuff, this like sounds hilarious. But one of my hacks is if I'm studying some subject that I'm a struggle bus on, I will often look for things written either for high schoolers or
mm,
comic book versions.
yeah.
And I have actually up there, I have maybe I'll go grab it. It's actually a comic book, Financial Intelligence for Entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
It's a comic book.
That's
So it's
amazing.
like, it's real simple. It's like,
Yeah.
then you got the cost of goods sold.
Yep.
And for me, it's funny. I haven't studied this a long time. We took a class at NYU like 5 years ago.
Yep.
And what a great thing. Like, I think, I got an A in the class, nailed it, but I still was like, I still like get like a lot of this. So I think it's also a great example of the challenges, if any of you are listening and you have anything, it's like, I know that I have one of my superpowers, like I could just memorize all the things and just do it. But at this point in my life, the good news is I'm very clear when I don't actually understand it.
Yeah.
Knowing the names of things is different than understanding things.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. I mean, it's the relationships that are complicated to
Yeah.
understand, not the categories and names and types of reports.
Yeah.
Like all of that is easy to memorize and get.
Yeah.
It's just how it all works together and influences each other. It's,
Completely. Because
years.
that's absolutely, it's all the ratios,
Yeah.
and then you also have to study your industry and study for you because also your business is different, right? Everyone's
Yeah.
different. So
Yeah. I can't tell you over the years how many For Dummies books I've bought. Just like whatever for dummies.
cash flow for dummies. Well, that's
Yeah.
how this all started and this doesn't happen so much for the typical training gem, but there are many businesses, if it's an inventory, like a physical goods intensive business, you can run out of cash and close
Hmm.
because you grew too quickly. So even though you were very profitable, you run out of money. And I remember when I heard that a few years ago, I was like, wait, you can run out of money and be profitable? What? And that's what started me really down the rabbit hole of understanding, like, holy crap, there's a lot I don't know about this. And if anybody, you have like a sinking feeling in your heart right now, and you're feeling that you'll never quite understand this, the good news, I promise you this, you don't need to actually be super, super expert on it. But if this doesn't come natural to you, and I can see, to me, this isn't the thing that came most natural to me, work really hard, just kind of understand the basics. And then all the other like fancy stuff, like, the difference between like, various ways of valuing a business, like I don't care.
No,
Maybe
sure.
we'll sell MFF, but I think the plan is to burn it down one day. Just coordinate, just like on fire. Like, we're done. That's our exit strategy.
Big s'mores party.
Just we come out in speedos and we're done. It's over.
We're done,
everyone.
Yeah. Well, we might, we'll see what happens with Port Authority. They might actually pay us to break it down.
That's true. That's good. Or maybe they'll just like knock it down for us.
Yeah.
That's not as dramatic, I don't think.
No, there needs to be fire. There needs to be fire.
For sure.
Cool. So I guess my turn. My topic is totally polar opposite, but there is some connection there. So that was all numbers and figures and math. And the thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and I'll tell you where this came from, is one of the posts I made in 2020. And I think I posted it maybe in our Unicorn Society group. I think I posted it in a WhatsApp chat that I'm on. The post that I made that I think got so much interesting conversation going this year was a post about how so many entrepreneur friends and small business owners I know struggle with something that is a phrase that's been more and more popular this year, that at least I've heard of for the first time this year, is this idea of internalized capitalism. This idea that so many, and the way I understand this, and I haven't studied this or anything or read anything about it other than a few articles, but I posted this quote about how we struggle with internalized capitalism and what that means. And the short version of the definition of that is that many of us who are entrepreneurs and business owners and business leaders, we value ourselves based on how much we can produce, based on how busy we are, based on how efficient we are, based on how many things we check off our to-do list every day, how many hours we work. That there's this thing driving so many of us, and it really, there was a big light shown on it, I think, in 2020, which is why I think this has resonated so much, and this phrase has maybe gained some traction, which was, at least I'll speak for myself, then in 2020, I felt like in many ways it was more difficult than ever for me to be productive. It was more difficult than ever to feel like I really won my day. It was more difficult than ever to feel like I knew what the next steps were. And in the absence of that clarity, in the absence of that productivity, I was like, oh shit, well then who am I?
Right. Right.
What does that say about who I am that I can't get all my shit done, that I'm not clear on my goals,
Yep.
that I'm stumbling in places where I've never stumbled before? That it was really, and whenever I would say that to folks or share that post or talk about it in my coaching calls, it would really resonate. It was something that really struck a chord with people that, oh yeah, we all do that all the time. That's part of part of that negative self-talk we all have as entrepreneurs and business leaders, is that self-talk about, Michael, you just weren't productive enough today. You just didn't accomplish enough today. And to recognize that, well, I'll talk about the antidote, which has been, the antidote for me has been the opposite. For me is to recognize my value in spite of my productivity. That I have
Sure.
value even on the days I do nothing. My existence has value.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
The doing of things is not the thing that makes me a great human,
Yes.
that makes me worthy of things,
Yes.
of love, of whatever, comfort. And that's, I don't know why that's so hard. I don't know why that's so hard. And what are your thoughts?
It seems to me like it's such like a, I don't want to make like a crude generalization, like Western society versus Eastern society, like yang versus yin, but that sense of equating one's self-worth with quantitative outcomes and with productivity and with like winning or whatever, it's challenging. It's a double-edged sword, right? Because there is some, I think there's some good things can come out of that for society, for the world. It can push you forward. But when it's not balanced with like a sense of actual intrinsic worth on the other hand, like that gets sticky, right? So for instance, here's the thing, like I am, there's a lot about capitalism I ascribe to, right?
Yep.
So like I do believe in the value of meritocracy, the value of like people working hard. Obviously, I think you and I both think that's not probably the way America's working right now. So I think we're pretty critical of the way this particular system is set up.
Yep.
But in theory, it kind of makes sense, right? In theory, like the more good you put out in the world, the more, cool things you get, right? And even that's like problematic. It's like, well, things, who cares about things? It doesn't even matter.
Yeah, but there's some sense of reward for the work, right?
Yeah. And it's pernicious because it is the tyranny of the quantifiable, right? Where it's like you can see if and again, we're maybe talking on both sides of your mouth, because the last thing you just said was like, know your numbers.
Yeah.
But then if you get attached, like my worth is dependent on these numbers.
Yeah.
My worth as a human is diminished if I have a business failure. That is wildly problematic. And quite frankly, that was the thing that finally pushed me into therapy a couple years ago. Was I came to realize part of what was happening, particularly as it relates to my relationship with our team, and to a lesser extent with clients, if I got critical feedback, it would ruin me, because what you're saying is if I'm not good at serving, and this is maybe slightly different but related because it's less about my financial outcomes, but more about the only value I have is the service I give to other people. And it was so clearly dissonant with my intellectual belief, which is the opposite of that. Perhaps my core value of life is egalitarianism, the intrinsic worth and value and dignity of all human beings.
Yeah.
And intellectually, I believe that to be true. But in practice, my self-worth was so wrapped around, again, not necessarily money per se, but in like, am I good? Am I doing a good job? Am I a good leader? Am I a good coach? And if there was anything that threatened that sense of myself, it was like so heavy, and I'm lucky, because I definitely have people in my life who's like, wow, you don't even care if you're a good leader at all. That's interesting. I'm not saying that's where I want to be either, but actually it was important for me to see like, oh wow, I have like friends that their whole team hates them and they just don't care. They just don't care that much about being a leader. Like, I don't care. It's like, fine, we're making money. Like, whatever. You're going to be unhappy. I'm doing the best I can. It's not that great, but whatever. I'm going to go hang out with my kids. And again, that's, maybe not my vision for myself, but I found that I really need to take some of the edge off of that and explore that. And, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on where you think that might come from, because certainly some of it is socialization. Some of it is, this has become like total therapy sessions. Like, probably growing up in an emotionally insecure household with my parents and being like, the one way I could get attention was if I did good, with 6 kids, like, and not being a particularly squeaky wheels. Like, but if I get straight A's, if I get the lead in the play, then I'll have value. Then I'll get attention. And there's worse dysfunctions to have, but it doesn't always work for me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's in part that's the paradox of this challenge, right? Is because it is definitively true that to run a successful business, you need to know your numbers. It needs to be efficient. It needs to make money. You need to track all the things you can track to make sure they're improving, right? That is definitively true. It's also definitively true that there's value in striving, right?
Mhm.
There's value in pushing yourself and wanting more. There's value in goal setting and, habit forming, right? There's all the things that we challenge ourselves to do, all also has value. And the crux comes at what I think you said just a minute or so ago is that when those things are linked to your own self-worth, that's the problem, right?
Oh,
That's
boy.
that's that's where it all starts to crumble. Is that because if that's not going, the business isn't going well, or you're striving and not meeting your goals, that somehow it makes you less valuable as a human. That's hard, and I see it all the time. I see it all the time. Is that my business is going well, or I don't know my numbers? That must mean there's something wrong with me. It's like, well, no, that's such a it's such a easy it's such a recipe for spiraling, right?
Yeah.
It's such a just creating the environment that whenever anything goes wrong, the meaning we make of it is something about
Yes.
our own self-worth or our own value. And I'm no therapist. But I know that recipe is
Yeah.
dangerous. And if we don't find regular ways, I think you said this as well earlier, regular ways to counteract that with ways that we can build value in our own self-esteem, our own self-worth outside of our business,
Yeah.
with our friends, with our family, with the community, with charity, with
Right.
just living and being and breathing and taking care of ourselves. If we're not investing in that part of ourselves, it's so easy for the business and the capitalism to be the only measuring stick we use for our
Yeah.
own self-worth.
And furthermore, I think one of the other issues you run into is if it always needs to be more, like, can it be
Mhm.
enough? Sometimes, like, isn't that the whole problem? Because it's never. And again, I see both sides. I understand certain, like, listen, like, again, like, I'm an entrepreneur. Like, I'll get down with that stuff. Like, I can get to a really, like, sociopathic place, like in my Christian Bale morning, where I'm like doing my gratitude journal and like drinking my coffee. Like, yeah, I'm gonna crush this day. I'm gonna grow. I'm gonna
Yeah.
achieve my potential. It is admirable in many many ways, and
Yep.
certainly, there's no limit, hopefully, like, on a human's potential. But certainly when that gets put into people's, like, business goals, like, like, I might suggest that some of the issues we have as a society, this completely cancerous approach to capitalism that always needs more. There
Yeah.
was an article I wrote a couple years back for Business for Unicorns. I think it was called 4951,
Mm.
which,
Yeah.
my understanding, was actually very controversial in some circles, because I just kind of poked a little bit of holes. I was like, I don't know this is the move, right? The classic thing you hear, and again, I please don't take offense if this is you. I don't mean this offensive. When someone's like, I am going to help 10 million entrepreneurs achieve their goals. And you're like, why? Why? Like, just, and again, I understand it, like, as like a tool, but I do believe that is a tail that can wag the dog and lead to potentially some less than ideal outcomes, right? Because I don't want this to sound like I'm poo-pooing ambition or desire.
Yeah.
I
Not at
am not.
all.
I'm into all those things. So,
We
but
help people all the time create scorecards and habit trackers and things that
yeah,
actually help people strive and grow. But we also, I think, try to put as much emphasis on less but better. Right. I
yeah,
mean, the book from a few years ago, Essentialism, was just one of my favorites. That, if things are just not a fuck yeah in your life, they're a no. And that
yeah,
idea is also really helpful, right?
yeah,
It's not always about more or broader. It's about deeper sometimes.
yes.
And I
Yes.
think that's another kind of key part of it, because I think that goes against a lot of capitalist ideas, you know?
I
And
just
so,
actually just started rereading Essentialism this morning randomly.
yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it's a good one to reread on a regular
yeah,
basis. Yeah. I think we can probably keep talking about this forever, but I want to. I think and I'm sure it'll come up again, or some version of this conversation will come up again in our pod in future conversations. But I think that it's useful just to consider. If you're
it
listener
really
and
is.
watcher, just what relationship do you have with your work, and with those capitalist ideas of more and money and tracking. And I think it's just useful to explore and make sure that if I have any tips or things that I think have worked myself or for folks that I've been working with this year, Business for Unicorns, is just, to make sure you have, this might sound a little condescending or cheesy, I don't know which one, but make sure you have a life outside of work. I think that's one piece of it, right? Is if you have some way that you feel valuable in your life as a husband, father,
Yeah,
friend, community leader, something that I think that it's when you have that value in other areas, you put less of your value into just money related growth.
yeah,
So anyway,
very, very true.
Yeah,
Very true.
I'll leave that there. So on our last chat, we promised that I would ask you actually the final 5 questions because I have some new final 5 questions this year. So let's just maybe wrap up with that. Let's see. Let me pull them up here. All right, here we go. I've been telling everyone for these final 5 questions, you can do it rapid fire if you have a quick answer, and if you like want to linger, you're welcome to.
Great.
I'm not the boss of you.
Well, you cheated and you told me one before, and I'm gonna also
true.
go off and answer it the way I want, go off the rails anyway. So
Yeah, there's the one of the questions people the first few times I've been asking, I was like, well, I wish you would have asked me that before. I really want to think about that one. So I'm cheating, but there was only one. Cool. Question number 1, you don't know this one.
Oh, yeah.
Mark Fisher, what is one thing you love about being a gym owner?
Oh gosh. Because it's nice. Because here's the thing, I think that is an industry and a business where your numbers are people's lives being better. And there are, listen, there's all sorts of like products and like things that like you need to buy. They're part of society and it's cool. And like, I'm glad to like have them. But I imagine some of them would be hard for me to get like jazzed up. Whereas you never lose sight when you're in a fitness business. Those numbers are people's lives. And those are people that by using your services, if you're doing a good job, are literally going to live longer. They're going to have better cognitive facilities. They're going to be in a better mood. And that's going to have like a ripple effect on everyone around them. So I think it's joyful to work in a business where it's such an obvious, unqualified, positive impact you have on people with the thing that you're selling.
Yeah. Amen. That's a good one. Question number 2, this is the one you know in advance, which is what is the coolest thing you've done or your business has done for a client? In our case, maybe a ninja.
Yeah, so I'm super cheating on this one because as a leader, your clients oftentimes are your team. So internal customer service matters. And one thing we did recently that was really cool was we surprised Amanda Wheels, who runs Homebody, with a vacation. We got to give mad props because we did do research. We reached out to her wife to see like what might be a fun thing. And her wife, who's a former MFFer and a friend of ours, was like, well, I realize it's not the right time. This is probably too much, but like, what if you sent her on vacation to go see her family, like gave her a week off? Because she has been crushing since we started Homebody. So that was really cool. So we worked to like arrange to make sure the rest of the team that we could get all her stuff covered. So she could also still get paid for that week and just go and hang out with her family. And then Riley was able to coordinate with her friends and family from home to make sure they were around to hang out. So that was like, felt really good. Felt really, really cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that spin, because, right, as a leader, our clients are also our team. So I'll accept that spin.
Yeah.
That's good. Awesome. Question number 3. When someone on your team does this, it makes you super happy. What is the thing that they do that just gets you crazy stoked?
Oh, so many things. There's a lot of things. The one that's coming to mind, this is a random one because Tim did it yesterday. When they tell me no, when they say I'm overcommitted and I'm afraid if I do this, I won't be able to do it at the level I want. Yes, literally. It's funny because it's a coincidence that I started reading Essentialism this morning, and so dear listeners, Tim Landicio is like one of our star trainers. This guy's just like a stud. He's a star. I always want to do stuff with him. He's so great. And we're launching a new coaching program at FMS soon. And I basically was like, would you want to do this? And it was truly a no pressure thing. But sometimes when your boss is like, would you want to do this? The people receive it as like, you need to do this or I'll be mad at you. And Tim, to his credit, and perhaps to the credit of our relationship, was like, gonna pass on this. This is just not a full body yes for me. And I've just got other stuff going on. I would hate to do it because I feel like I will get up to the edge of capacity. And that ability for him to think ahead and look out for planning fallacy and not overcommit out of a misguided desire to please me when truly I didn't even need to do it anyway. I just wanted to know he was invited to the dance. That was something really awesome. So I really appreciate it when people like know their limits, and because then we all win.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the opposite is just the worst case scenario when everyone just says yes to the boss, but then is suffering silently or not so silently. It's like
say no.
No one wants that. Well, good job, Tim, and good job you. Question number 4. You'll love this one, and we talked about this in our last chat. But question number 4 is, what is your most reliable strategy for generating leads? If you had to go generate leads tomorrow, what do you do?
I mean, for us, the most reliable one is reaching out to former members broadly. And specifically, this is a thing that's maybe a little bit unusual for us because of just the years we've been hammering away at this. And I do think we are now I don't want to say cashing in, because again, it sounds like we're like debiting from the accounts, but I think we are leveraging having 10 years of people knowing who we are and kind of liking us.
Yeah.
So email marketing for us has been huge. And we also do digital marketing. We had a really successful referral contest we ran in November. So like all of you, we do lots of things. You should be doing lots of things, but we crush email marketing. It is like every week when the email goes out on Monday, we get anywhere between 2 to 12 lead opt-ins, like for the trial, every single week. And that's amazing, because there's a lot of gyms that don't even get that with their digital ads. And email marketing is also great because it's free. It costs literally no money other than the time it takes for me to be like, whatever it is I'm pontificating on in a given week.
Yeah, that's a great one. I just want to yes and elaborate on that, just because when I talk to folks, they often have this hesitation about reaching out to past clients. One, because they didn't do a good job of finding out why they were leaving in the first place. They don't have like an exit interview or something. And two, they have this awkwardness. When they talk about it, it reminds me of like trying to reach out to like an ex.
Yeah.
They have some weird energy around talking to a client who had left at some point. And so if either one of those are you, lovely listener, just, one, have a good exit interview, find out what people leave. Because if they move away, then maybe you don't reach out to them unless you have an online product, right? But if there's just a short life change, you might be able to sell them again pretty quickly. And two, just get pushed through the discomfort of talking to quote exes, is that, that's I understand the hesitation, but you got to push through it, because there's so much value in people who have known and liked and trust you and paid you in the past. They're just such low hanging fruit for bringing them back into your world. Yeah. So I wanted to pause and yes and. So I love that answer. Last one, question number 5 is, what's one thing gym owners listening can start doing better tomorrow?
Oh, I'm trying to think. I mean, the one that comes to mind was sort of beating this horse, which is know your numbers, track your numbers. That certainly would be part of it.
Yeah.
I guess I would piggyback on that last one, which is communicate regularly with your community somehow. Again, I'm big on email marketing. I'm like such a contrarian, and maybe one day, maybe next podcast, we could talk about my contrarian beliefs about organic social media as just the ultimate waste of time for so many people. I'm not saying you shouldn't do any of it. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a presence there, but
as you watch this on YouTube, or we're clearly doing some of it.
Well, and I think this is also different, I guess. Thank you, because I should clarify. I mean, Instagram, I think specifically for a lot of people, it can lead to sales, but do you have a good follow process, right? Because every time someone follow you, do you have an if-then thing that you then have a conversation with them and then try to move them down the funnel to offer them more opportunities to work with you? Then it can make more sense. But even then, it just seems like a lot of people spend a lot of time with like posting stuff on social media, and they're not tracking number one. So that's maybe one problem. Maybe that's the thing, like track where your leads are coming from, so you know what's use of your time.
And there's no strategy.
Yeah, it's like there, and again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a presence, because I will concede this. Instagram is almost the modern day website, which isn't to say that you shouldn't have a website. You should also have a website. But these days, many of your consumers, and regardless of the conventional wisdom, which is largely true that younger people are more on Instagram than quote unquote older people like us. But the reality is many people will now go to your Instagram the way they would a website, just to get a feel for what's going on. So again, by all means, you need to have a presence there. Do you need to have 3 posts per day and 12 stories per day as a brick and mortar location dependent business? I don't know. I don't know it's wrong to do that, but you might be better situated taking some of that time and sprinkling among some other activities like consistent email marketing, which could just be once a week,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's great. And we can probably on our next chat, maybe just dive into social media a little bit more and talk about all the ways we love it and all the ways it's challenging or problematic for some folks.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, great. Well, thanks for this chat. This was fun. We're gonna keep doing it, my friends.
We shall.
I didn't want to end this one. We're recording this just around the holidays, and I'm wearing a holiday sweatshirt, which is going to be probably inappropriate by the time this airs. But at least we need to share what it looks like, because I think it's really fun. And people who know me know that I love Golden Girls.
Yes. Much like most fitness business gurus, Keeler loves the Golden Girls.
For those listening in the podcast, it says, "May all your Christmases be white," but spelled like B. Arthur and Betty White. So get into it. I just thought, if I'm going to share any holiday spirit, it's going to be a reference for the Golden Girls. So that's where we're at. Well, thanks for joining me, Mr. Fisher. It's such a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you,
And
and thanks for listening.
yeah, we'll be having a chat again in probably 2 weeks from now. So we'll see and talk to you all soon. Bye.
Subscribe,
Subscribe.
like us, do those things, do the things you're supposed to do.
Bye, friends.
Bye.
Hey, friends, before you go, just one more thing. If you enjoy this podcast, you get value out of it, you enjoy listening, please share this podcast, comment below. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. Please share it with friends and family. We don't spend any money on marketing or advertising. And so the only way people find out about this podcast is from you. So please do everything you can to share it with friends and fellow colleagues in the fitness industry. We love making it and we want to keep doing it for a long, long time. So I appreciate your support. Go have a kick-ass day. Bye.